and Stuart records his Cowboy Church of the Air episodes in the downstairs bedroom right under Errol's old two-way mirror. The darker side of Errol Flynn is all around, and far from being offended, the deeply religious Hamblens find Errol Flynn's house oddly perfect. "He was a little odd," said Susie Hamblen of Flynn. "You'd wonder," says Kim, "why was this staircase here? Why was this trap door here?" It reflected Errol Flynn's personality because everything was beyond what you could imagine. From what I know about him, he was larger than life and very imaginative, and the design was so different. Kim's brother, Bob Lindsay, will spend years exploring the house as a kid, where he will open the trap door and peer down through the two-way mirror. All oddities of the previous owner. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Jennifer. I am so happy to have you here for episode 10 of Errol Flynn Slept Here. Now, it's been a long and wild ride. We are 10 episodes deep into this series. Now, you can definitely jump in this episode if you haven't watched anything else. That is totally fine, but I would beg you, I would plead with you to go back to the beginning of the playlist and watch all of the previous 9 episodes, because Errol Flynn was quite the character, and this is the story of the man, and this is the story of his palace that he built high in the San Fernando Mountains above Hollywood and Los Angeles, Mulholland House, and it was situated on 11 acres, what was known as Mulholland Farm. And in the previous 9 episodes, what's happened? Well, we've learned all about Errol, his beginnings, how he got to Hollywood. I mean, this man lived such a full life before the age of 25, head hunting in the jungles of New Guinea, on the streets of Sydney, Australia, just doing all kinds of craziness, right? All before the age of 25. He comes to Hollywood in the age of 25, becomes a Hollywood blockbuster movie star, builds his palace Mulholland House, and the entire story of Errol. Now, that's everything in the first 9 episodes. Where we find ourselves in this episode, Errol has now passed all the years of hard partying, hard drinking, 3 wives, 4 children, strings of one-night stands. He survived a statutory rape trial in 1943. All of the hard living, the hard life, all of the tragedy and turmoil in Errol's life consumed him in October of 1959. He tragically passed at the age of 50 with the body of an 80-year-old. According to the autopsy, that is such hard living that the man did. Such a tragedy, had so much going for him. Just loved life to the fullest type of man, intelligent, savvy, witty, sarcastic, just so many things rolled into one. This package of a man perished at 50. So that's everything we go through in the first 9 episodes. And the new family is that of Stuart Hamblen. And this is where we start this episode. And we're going to go into chapter 8 of the book Errol Flynn Slept Here. And this chapter is called This Old House. So now that Errol is dead and gone, the Hamblens are assuming control, and a new era begins at Mulholland House and at Mulholland Farm. And as I hinted in the last episode, the tail end of episode 9, Errol hasn't really left the property. There are rumblings that Errol is still about, and we're going to learn about the new occupants, Stuart and Susie Hamblen, and everything that they went through. After this episode, we're going to learn about Rick Nelson, the famous teenage heartthrob Rick Nelson of Ozzie and Harriet fame, and, carved out his own existence for himself, a singing career, and his famous children, Tracy Nelson and Matthew and Gunnar Nelson. So they move in after the Hamblens. But in this episode, we're going to be focusing on Stuart Hamblen and their time. So definitely go back and watch and catch up on any episodes that you may have missed. I'm telling you, it's a banger. You don't want to miss it, especially anything having to do with Errol, because he is quite the character. But let's get into episode 8, This Old House. The night of October 14th, 1959, Stuart and Susie Hamblen, the new owners of Mulholland Farm, are at home on a cool and dead quiet mountaintop evening. The night Errol Flynn died, remembers Susie Hamblen, the whole house shook like crazy. The pressure regulator had gone bad, causing the pipes to vibrate. It will be the first of many strange occurrences at Mulholland House after the passing of Errol Flynn. And I'm telling you, this man was such a force in life. I do not think for one second that he wasn't one in death. Now, I am a Catholic Christian. I pray for Errol's soul daily. I think he's in purgatory, and I think he needs our prayers. So let's continue to pray for Errol. But I digress. In some ways, Carl Stuart Hamblen is not dissimilar to Mulholland's previous owner. He is a talented and robust man's man, described by evangelist Billy Graham as rough, strong, loud, and earthy. Every inch of his 6'2" frame was genuine cowboy, and his 220 pounds seemed all bone and muscle. Hamblen is a movie actor, friend of John Wayne and Roy Rogers, and a radio personality, recording artist, and songwriter. For the past 10 years, he has been an evangelical Christian thanks to a famous conversion at a tent crusade in Los Angeles that put the young blonde trumpet-lunged Graham, according to Time magazine, on the map. After that, there would be no more gambling and boozing for Stuart Hamblen, who turns his considerable songwriting skills to gospel music. So yes, that is the same Billy Graham. So I guess Stuart had his conversion to Jesus Christ during a tent revival with Billy Graham at the helm. So that's pretty awesome. It is no secret. A song inspired by a conversation with John Wayne is credited with being the first gospel song to cross over to the pop charts. That's Stuart Hamblen's song. Another, This OLE House, spelled O-L-E, becomes a hit for Rosemary Clooney and for Hamblen, and is recognized as Billboard's magazine Song of the Year in 1954. He is such a songwriting talent that his work will be recorded by artists as diverse as Dean Martin, Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, Bette Midler, and practically anyone who ever did a gospel album, according to Stuart Hamblen's daughter, Lisa Hamblen Jassery. His past radio shows, Stuart Hamblen and His Lucky Stars, and Stuart Hamblen and His Covered Wagon Jubilee, have been top rated on the West Coast. Hamblen uses these programs to tell spellbinding stories in his easy homespun style, like his contemporary Arthur Godfrey and like Garrison Keillor today. With such wide media exposure, Hamblen is asked to run for the office of President of the United States on the Prohibition Party ticket in 1952. The Hamblens reside in Hollywood, then Arcadia, and then Westwood, to be near their daughters at UCLA. In 1958, with the kids out of college, Susie Hamblen begins a search for a new home for the family, hounds, and horses. The Hamblens raise racehorses. Lately, Stuart has been disquieted in Westwood, and his songwriting has slowed to nothing. Susie believes it's time for a change. As she will later record in one of her short stories, or serendipities as they were called, she opens the LA Times to look at real estate ads, and the first one she sees lists 5 acres on Mulholland Drive. She ventures up to inspect the property with the idea that she and Stuart can build a new house on the site. Then her eyes catch on the higher 2.5-acre lot and a beautiful big 2-story colonial-type house sitting high on the hillside overlooking all of the San Fernando Valley. It is Errol Flynn's place on 2 separate lots, with the lower 5 acres, including the stable and casino, to be sold separately, and the upper lot packaged to include the house, pool, and the tennis court. That day, Susie Hamblen makes a commitment to purchase both parcels for $160,000, which annoys her husband. "I don't even want to see it," says Stuart Hamblen. "You bought it. You find a way to pay for it. Just count me out." She manages to get him up there for a quick look, but his mind is made up. And there's a picture in the chapter, and it says, Stuart Hamblen saw this view of Mulholland Farm as Susie drove him over Mulholland Highway from Outpost. Now there's a beautiful place, he told her, not knowing that he was looking at the house she wanted to buy, the house that Errol Flynn built. A year of house hunting passes, and no house captivates her like Errol Flynn's place had. She assumes that by now it's long off the market and doesn't have the heart to find out for certain. In desperation, she drives up the winding road and sees a billboard at 7740 Mulholland Drive advertising lots for sale. The lower 5 acres have now been subdivided. She motors up Errol Flynn's long driveway, now an official street called Torrison Place. To her amazement, Mulholland House is still for sale, the white gables visible up the ridge. She stops her car on Torrison and prays for guidance and then returns home. Let's involve the Lord, right? Good woman. That same day, the real estate agent calls stating that she has been going through her files and she wonders if the Hamblens have found a place yet. Later that day, Susie relates the story to her husband Stuart, who now must agree, given her prayer and the sudden response, that he needs to at least give the place some consideration. Susie Hamblen later writes about the day they decide to buy Errol Flynn's Mulholland Farm. This is a Susie Hamblen quote. "The first time I had shown the house to Stuart, we had driven up Laurel Canyon to Mulholland, gone east 1 mile to Torrison Place, then up 1 block to the gate of the house. That was from the back, and there was no sweeping view of it. This time I used a little more finesse and suggested we go up Outpost and west on Mulholland Drive. On the way, at every house that had a for sale sign, Stuart would say, 'That's a nice house. Let's look at that.' We came along Mulholland, where you could look out over the whole San Fernando Valley on the right. He looked up to the left at the panorama of green grass and trees sloping up to a tennis court, and a wide hillside covered with blooming lavender latania cascading down it, leading up to a big 2-story colonial house. It looked like an old-fashioned Valentine card. 'Now there's a beautiful place,' he said. 'If we could find something like that, I'd be interested.' 'That's it. That's the place we're headed for,' I had said. 'It is not.' 'Yes, it is.' 'Well, I'll be damned,' said Stuart. He stopped the car, got out, and looked at it for a long while. He had committed himself. The corner lots on Tennyson and on Mulholland, prime footage, are already sold, so the Hamblens negotiate for the remainder of the subdivision and the upper lot with the house and tennis court. They buy it all, 7.5 acres for $180,000, and begin a 20-year run at Mulholland Farm, almost double the time Flynn had spent there. Upon moving in, the family finds strange mementos of the Flynn years. Herve Presnell, actor, singer, and future star of the unsinkable Molly Brown, Saving Private Ryan, Fargo, and many other films, and The Pretender and Dawson's Creek, among other television shows, spends a generation at Mulholland as the boyfriend and then husband of Viva Hamblen, who was Stuart and Susie's daughter. We took about 2 truckloads of empty bottles, mostly vodka bottles, off of that place when Pappy and Nana moved up there, says Harv of the ravine behind the house. There were a bunch. I don't know how anybody could drink that much, but I know it's a fact because I was the guy who drove the truck and the guy who put most of the bottles in the truck. Flynn and his crowd drank and threw their bottles out the window and over the hill, and we had a cleanup of major proportions. And if you know Errol, you know that later in life, after the rape trial, when his psyche just took a nosedive and he pretty much gave up on life and took the downhill slide into oblivion, vodka was his drink of choice because he found that it was undetectable on the breath and it didn't seep out of the pores. So he would drink vodka a lot, and he famously took a bunch of oranges. He had a crate of oranges on one of his movie sets. The actual set of the movie escapes me, but he took a syringe and he would he would insert vodka into oranges and eat the oranges when booze was prohibited on the set from the head of Warner Brothers Pictures, J.L. Warner. So he got around a lot of things and he wouldn't be told what to do by any accounts, but vodka was Errol's drink of choice. So do I believe that there were a shit ton of vodka bottles in the ravine behind the house? Heck yeah, I do. That would have definitely been Errol. The house becomes the center of the Hamblen universe, including Susie and Stuart's daughters, Viva and Lisa, and many grandchildren. Kim Jassery, Lisa's daughter, will spend the first 12 years visiting and playing at Mulholland. It was a very special place, she remembers, and it brought a lot of love and happiness to a lot of families. All the people that came up there, it was wild. It was indicative of my grandfather, too. Her grandfather, Stuart Hamblen. That home fit my grandfather's personality as much as it did Errol Flynn's, because my grandfather was very robust and wild in his nature, and it kind of fit in with his lifestyle and being able to bless other people with such an interesting place. And there is a picture in the chapter of Stuart Hamblen surrounded by a bunch of children and family, and it's really cute. He's holding a little baby, and it says, Stuart Hamblen entertains the assembled throng of children during his first Easter egg hunt. Now, these are famous hunts, and we'll get into it in a second. In the background, the French doors of the dining room are thrown open, as Flynn used to do during his Hollywood parties. So Lisa is Stuart Hamblen's granddaughter. And, she just said that her grandfather was just a robust and wild personality, and Mulholland House and Mulholland Farm seemed to just fit him just the way it fit Errol. And so the book goes on and says, wild indeed. According to grandson Bill Lindsay, my grandfather loved to hunt, meaning Stuart Hamblen. He came in late one night and had a mountain lion he'd shot. He didn't know what to do with it, so he empties out the half-height freezer in the garage and sticks the mountain lion in it, then goes up to bed. At about 6 a.m, he hears a scream and a crashing, and my grandmother comes storming into the room. She says, Stuart, get out of bed and go see what you did to the poor milkman. He goes downstairs and the milkman says, I'm sorry, Mr. Hamblen. I opened up the freezer and it scared me. There were milk, eggs, and ice cream all over the floor. My grandmother said to Pappy, you made the mess, you clean it up. He started cleaning it up and she took pictures of it. It was basically a ranch, says Lisa, who, with her mother, raises prize Peruvian horses there, with Stuart reveling in the role of rancher. We had horses in the pasture, says Lisa. We had Old If, his hunting horse that he talks about in all his stories on the radio show, in the pasture down there. Herve Presnell characterizes Stuart's personality in a story about the burial of Old If at the farm, despite a county ordinance forbidding such burials. I came up here one day and drove past Pappy sitting in his truck with a gun. He was looking out the window. I looked across the street and there were a couple of guys sitting in their truck. I said, Pappy, what the hell's going on? He said, I told those boys they're not digging up. He's buried right here and nobody's going to bother him. And they turned off my water, so I turned it back on. Lisa says, Daddy didn't know there was an ordinance against it. He just buried his beloved horse. The city officials were friends of his and they didn't want the bad publicity. If's grave remains undisturbed, but make no mistake, Hamblen is indeed robust and wild in his nature, and at the same time, a good-hearted guy. And that's how I really feel to this day, how I would characterize Errol. We're all sinners. He was a sinful man, made a lot of mistakes, but I don't believe at his heart he was a bad and an evil man. I think he just made so many bad choices and he was just headed on this trajectory for just oblivion. I always say it's so sad, but it is. Okay, so getting back to the Hamblen Stuart. He invents the annual Hamblen Easter egg hunt for his small grandchildren, which grows into an important area event. Says Bill Lindsay, the first in the wave of Hamblen grandkids, Pappy would invite kids. I had never seen some of these kids before. Who are these kids? I had no idea. They were kids from everywhere, neighborhood kids. I even think one time he opened it up to people on the radio. It was amazing how many kids would show up for that thing. At its height, as many as 300 children congregate at Mulholland for the annual egg hunt, with the finder of a golden egg winning a live goat. Stuart and Susie also host get-togethers and Bible studies and invite international students to the farm once a month for 18 years. And there is a picture in the chapter of Mulholland House, and a ton of children assembled for an Easter egg hunt. And it says, luckily, these children can't see back in time to the Flynn parties of old. On a sun-drenched Easter, Stuart Hamblen plays Pied Piper to a throng that is eager to descend the tennis court steps on their way to the Easter egg hunt. And then there's also a really funny picture. I'm just going to put it up here. And it says, you made the mess, you cleaned it up, barked Susie Hamblen to Stuart, still in his pajamas, after he scared the milkman at 6 a.m. with a freshly killed mountain lion stored in the half-height freezer in the garage at Mulholland Farm. So he's literally... he's just like cleaning up the ice cream and the milk and all this crap on the garage floor in there. And it's like such a dude. Like, he's doing it with his bare feet. I mean, how gross can you be? But anyway, and then there's another picture. And it says, Lisa, Obie, Hamblen, Jassery, and son Billy feed the prize goat at the first annual Easter egg hunt in 1961. Every year I had to find a goat without horns, she said. So yeah, that was the big prize. Whoever found the golden egg at the Easter egg hunt that Stuart Hamblen would throw would get a live goat. I don't know if that's a great prize, but yeah, anyhow. There were an awful lot of people up here from time to time, says Harv. Reagan was here, as in Ronald Reagan, and Duke John Wayne came by. There was a lot of history in terms of people coming and visiting. Ronald Reagan had been a favorite of Errol Flynn's and attended many dinner parties at Mulholland, and now visits the Hamblens to speak at a Young Americans meeting. And Errol starred in a few pictures with Ronald Reagan, and by all accounts, they got along very, very well. Stuart Hamblen hangs out with the country western crowd. Roy Rogers and Dale Evans were personal friends, says his daughter Lisa. Johnny Cash they knew. One time, Daddy was down performing at the Hollywood Bowl and told Mother that he had invited Buck Owens from Bakersfield to come up, and Mother said, okay. What she didn't know was that Owens was in a bus full of people, so she's greeting all these people and rushed up to the house and made a couple cherry cobblers and served everybody cobblers and root beer floats, all 60 or 70 of them. This open door policy remains in effect for 20 years. Susie and Lisa raise their prize horses, and Stuart records his Cowboy Church of the Air episodes in the downstairs bedroom right under Errol's old two-way mirror. The darker side of Errol Flynn is all around, and far from being offended, the deeply religious Hamblens find Errol Flynn's house oddly perfect. He was a little odd, said Susie Hamblen of Flynn. You'd wonder, says Kim, why was this staircase here? Why was this trap door here? It reflected Errol Flynn's personality because everything was beyond what you could imagine. From what I know about him, he was larger than life and very imaginative, and the design was so different. Kim's brother, Bob Lindsay, will spend years exploring the house as a kid. He will make his way through a crawl space that runs the length of the roof line, from a guest bedroom on one side to the attic on the other, where he will open the trap door and peer down through the two-way mirror. There's a whole chapter on Errol's infamous two-way mirror. He will try and fail to open a secret safe that Flynn installed in the floor of the downstairs bedroom, and he will look at the door to the bathroom near the den and its designation, ladies, and at the door to the bathroom near the dining room and its designation, men, all oddities of the previous owner. Stuart and Susie make few changes to the house. Lily had ordered, and this is Lily Demita, Errol's first wife, Lily had ordered the Knotty Pine living room to be painted white, but she left the den intact. The Hamblens loved the Knotty Pine and many other Flynn appointments, including the yellow bedroom and the aqua bedroom upstairs. Two significant changes are made. Susie Hamblen orders Flynn's bar to be taken away. She places an organ in that spot. And in 1967, a Christmas-time fire destroys Rory's small nursery upstairs and burns through part of the roof. We were on our way to Arcadia and met the fire trucks at the gate, says Susie. Our house was on fire and we didn't know it, but the fire trucks were there. The Hamblens restore and enlarge the damaged nursery, which Susie had used for a sewing room. When they rebuilt it after the fire, says their daughter Lisa, they made it into a long dorm for all the grandchildren. And Kim says, up in that room past the master bath, we used to go there and play dress up. Stuart Hamblen will write several of his most important songs at Mulholland. How Big Is God, one of the first after he moves in. Lisa says, my dad and mother loved the house. We called it the castle. Bob Lindsay says, Nana and Pap picked us up after school, and we were there pretty much every day. It's not like this was my grandparents' house. It was our house. We lived there. Bob's older brother Bill remembers the sleepovers. I have fond memories of being in the master bedroom there. The 4 of us were there. There were 2 cots, so some of us were in cots and some of us were on the floor. And we'd be at the foot of Pappy and Nana's bed listening to Pappy tell stories. He'd tell stories for hours. We just eat it up and eventually fall asleep. I love hearing that. I love hearing that, although Errol used that home for a lot of nefarious purposes, like all of his, seductions and parties and things. It's sweet and nice to know that the Hamblens embraced this home and even embraced its former owner and just kind of made it their own sweet place. And even the way that they nicknamed it the castle, that was pretty awesome. There's another picture of Mulholland House, and it says, the Hamblens' open door policy at stately Mulholland Farm continued for almost 20 years of egg hunts and family get-togethers. But in the last few years, the house and the neighborhood around it began to deteriorate. So we're going to get into that as we go on. So it says, Susie isn't the entertainer her husband is, but she is a vibrant force in her own right. She was awesome, said Bill of his grandmother. If we ever got into a fight, any of us kids, in the dining room, one whole wall was mirrors. She would stand both of us in front of that wall of mirrors and have us recite Psalm chapter 118, verse 24. This is the day the Lord hath made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. And we had to say it until we were glad in it. Which wasn't long because you'd say it with a frown on your face, staring at yourself in the mirror and trying to be mad, and then you'd kind of laugh anyway. Tully Brown, another grandchild, said, for us, it was the holidays. Any family gathering, any family, anything for that whole period was at the castle. Stuart and Susie Hamblen are active and vital performers, appearing on national television shows, in parades, and in religious events. In 1971, Stuart resumes production of his radio show, Cowboy, Church of the Air, and records the programs in the music room underneath the two-way mirror. He activates a flashing light in the den to keep family members from wandering into his recording sessions. In 1976, the Hamblens drive over Mulholland and down Laurel Canyon for the unveiling of Stuart's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. By this time, the neighborhood has begun to change, and the Hamblens entertain thoughts of leaving their beloved home of nearly 2 decades. Mother and Daddy moved because the area became really bad, says Lisa. My husband and I had been here in Santa Clarita for about 5 years at the time, and my parents had been getting police helicopters right over their heads and bodies dumped on Mulholland Drive in front of their house, and houses had been burglarized everywhere. Ours had not because of the dogs. Mother was alone when Daddy traveled, and the housekeeper wasn't there, so with the bodies dumped and the police looking for rapists, they just said, this is not a good place to be. Amid plenty of buzz, the Hamblens began showing the house to prospective buyers, which brings together the oddest couple on this or any other California mountain. Rolling Stone guitarist Ron Wood, friend of Rory Flynn from her modeling days, shows up at Mulholland right around the time that Shattered and Beast of Burden, famous Rolling Stone songs, are charting. He receives a tour from Stuart Hamblen himself, a tour that features not the quaint colonial farmhouse aspects of Mulholland, but rather Hamblen goes out of his way to show Wood the secret passageways, the two-way mirror, the viewing points in the ceilings, all of which impress the rock star very much. Not enough to buy the place, but Wood will reminisce about his trip to Mulholland Farm in an irreverent autobiography called Ron Wood by Ron Wood, The Works, released a decade later. I think that is so funny and shows how astute Stuart Hamblen was. I mean, he's giving a house tour. He's trying to sell Mulholland House after, almost 20 years of occupancy to a rock and roller, Ron Wood. So, of course, he's going to show all of the, kind of weird and kinky Flynn aspects of the property. That was actually pretty smart on his part. Another famous personality was much closer to actually buying Mulholland, star of Jaws and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Richard Dreyfuss. It was epic for me, Dreyfuss says, of watching Errol Flynn movies as a child, and Stuart Hamblen is all too happy to take Dreyfuss through Mulholland and show him the Flynn touches. Dreyfuss even draws up plans for renovations, but decides against buying because of the amount of work that was needed. In fact, Mulholland is destined to be owned by a musician, perhaps because music has been on the air at the farm since its birth, when Flynn had outfitted the entire house with speakers inside and out upon construction in 1941. Flynn's parties have always featured live musicians or bands or combination of the two. Thanks to Stuart Hamblen, music has been more ingrained there than ever and isn't about to leave, even if the Hamblens feel that they have to move on. The first musician who sees it, Ron Wood of Rolling Stone fame, will say no. But the second musician who comes along right after Richard Dreyfuss won't just buy Mulholland Farm, he'll be consumed by it, and a new band formed in Flynn's old master bedroom will go multi-platinum. And then one of the last pictures in this chapter shows Stuart and Susie Hamblen in the den, and it says, following the Mulholland tradition, Stuart and Susie Hamblen sit for a 1970s portrait using a leather easy chair in the den with a dog at their feet, as Errol Flynn had done in this same spot a quarter century earlier. And then it also shows a picture of Rick Nelson, the handsome Rick Nelson. It's an album cover called Playing to Win, and it says Rick Nelson released his last original album, Playing to Win, less than a year after purchasing Mulholland Farm. Says Joel Selvin, longtime music critic of the San Francisco Chronicle and a Rick Nelson biographer. On the whole, Playing to Win presented Rick in a thoroughly believable modern-day light. Nothing groundbreaking, but fresh and compatible with his essential character. Still, the album failed to capture the public's attention, which led in part to some lean years ahead at Mulholland. So that is the end of chapter 8, This OLE House. So I just really love the fact that after Errol died, and, even before he died, when he had to basically abandon Mulholland House and Farm because he was rapidly running out of money. He, couldn't support all these ex-wives, all this alimony, all these child support payments. Well, he was basically running away from Lily Demita, his first wife, the silent French film star. But, he did love Mulholland Farm. He designed that house. It was all of his own design, all of his own making. It just captured the essence of who Errol was. And I think that that's what Stuart and Susie Hamblen were recognizing throughout their 2 decades there, was all the Flynn touches. But I do like, again, how they just embraced it and embraced the fact that Errol was kind of like this crazy swashbuckling character that put all these unique touches on the home, but then they indeed did make it their own. So now we're going to move into the next chapter, where we're going to be talking about Rick Nelson and Rick Nelson's era over at the farm and Mulholland House when he moved his family in, and what happened to the Nelson family during their time there. Now, if you go back all the way to episode 1 of this series, I start the series off with a ghost story. And the ghost story is told by Tracy Nelson, who is Rick Nelson's daughter. And she talks about her experiences at Mulholland House and Mulholland Farm, everything that terrorized her and creeped her out to the point where she felt that she had to get out and leave the farm. And in chapter 9, this one that's coming up next episode is going to be called Consumed by Mulholland. And again, it's going to characterize the Rick Nelson family years, their time there, everything that happened. And it will go into Tracy Nelson's story. And it will also, in addition, go into Gunnar and Matthew Nelson's stories of their time at Mulholland House and Mulholland Farm. They're the famous rock twin boy duo. So they're going to tell their stories. I can't wait to get you guys into this next chapter. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you're enjoying the series. Again, get caught up if you haven't, and I will talk to you very, very soon. Bye.